Chapter 4, Scene 4. Henry heard the running feet first and nudged his father. At once they both turned to the barn door that was still open for the wagons that had brought in the loads of flax. Adam's 8-year-old daughter, Eve, appeared. She was out of breath, her eyes wide with fear, and her cheeks were flushed like she had seen a ghost. "Papa, something's happened. Come quick." Panic rose from someplace deep within Adam. He immediately made the connection to the premonitions, as he had never done before. He stopped breathing and stared at his surprisingly intelligent, tough daughter, who seemed always to possess calm confidence. He had never seen her frantic or alarmed until now. Her uncharacteristic behavior had nailed his boots to the barn floor in fear. She repeated her plea, "Papa, come, please. Something's happened to Mama." This time, Adam saw her tears, twisted mouth, and contorted muscles. She turned and ran back to the house. That pulled the nails out of his shoes. Adam dropped the fistful of flax and ran after her. "Where, daughter?" "Gathering hall," she yelled, turning back to him as she ran ahead. The gathering hall was the largest room in their house. In it was a large fireplace for warmth during the winter, a spinner, a loom, a china cabinet, a linen dresser, and a long wood plank table. Esther spent most of her time in the gathering hall, spinning, weaving, sewing, and cooking. Of late, she was hand-stitching shirts, pants, and dressers for the poor children that lived near her church in York. Her hand-sewing skills were the envy of many women. There was a natural proportion and tightness to her even hems, straight seams, and billowy ruffles. Esther was proud to fashion clothing out of hearty linen that would last for generations. Adam was always amazed at how swiftly she could stitch a garment, even as she baked and prepared meals. He felt very lucky to have married such a woman. Now, with Eve coming of age, Esther was passing on her skills. He had hope for the future. He expected that Esther had burned herself in the fireplace, perhaps preparing a stew for supper, and that she'd be standing there, perhaps holding her burned wrist, a smile on her face. "Relax, Adam, I'm all right. I just singed my wrist." "Eve, don't scare your father like that." Esther was a slender woman of average height, with a long face, pointed chin, small mouth with thin lips, and piercing, close-set brown eyes, framed by a massive crop of curly auburn hair that she wore down. She tended the sheep and cows her family kept, fed the chickens, and chased piglets in the mud. She feared nothing, and one time at the age of 10, she brought home a harmless 3-foot-long scarlet milk snake, causing her mother to run for the barn and a shovel. The snake survived to slither away, and so did Esther's mother. When Adam mounted the porch and entered the foyer, Esther didn't appear. He did hear the plaintive meow of Esther's long-haired calico cat, Cleopatra. Following Eve, Adam turned left into the gathering hall. "Papa, over here," Eve said with a fright, as she stood trembling behind the large wood plank table at the back of the room, near the door that led down to the summer kitchen. After breakfast, the table had been cleared and was now covered with patterns and pieces of cut neutral-colored cloth for a small girl's dress. When Adam maneuvered around the furniture, he saw his wife lying on the floor in a clump. She was wearing her favorite pale yellow work dress and her knit shawl around her shoulders. Cleopatra was crouched next to Esther's head, as if to warm her fallen mistress. There was no rhyme or reason to how her torso, arms, and legs lay askew next to the chair in which she had evidently been sitting. A needle thread and half-finished seam lay loose in her hands. Her neck was twisted awkwardly to one side. Her long, dark auburn hair partly obscured her face, her body dead still. It was as if a life-size rag doll with no backbone, or any bones for that matter, had been dropped in the chair and then flopped to the floor. Adam knelt at Esther's side, pushed her hair aside, and turned her face toward him. Her white muffin mop cap had fallen over her eyes. He pushed it back. Her eyes were closed. Her face relaxed. No scratches. "Esther!" He gently shook her shoulders, trying to revive her. Eve took the needle, thread, and unfitted garment from her mother's hands, folded them neatly and laid them on the table, then knelt on the other side. "Is she breathing?" Adam put his ear next to Esther's mouth, that it was partly open. "Yes, but a little." "Papa, what's wrong with Mama?" asked Henry, who stood over them. There was worry in his voice. Adam just shook his head. "He don't know," Eve said, her voice shaking. Adam straightened Esther's legs and arms and ran his hand over them, searching for broken bones. None. Her skin color was rugged as usual. He felt for a pulse, but his calloused fingers weren't much good for that. "Let's get her to bed," he said. Adam gently put his arms under his much smaller wife, lifted her easily, and carried her out of the room. Eve ran ahead of him to the foyer and the staircase. Esther was like a rag doll as Adam carried her up the stairs. Once in the upstairs hall, Eve opened the door to the master bedroom. Adam followed and gently laid Esther on their bed. He took off her cap. Eve helped him remove her shoes. She just lay there, not moving, except for the slight rise and fall of her chest. They covered her with a linen blanket, and he took a wet cloth and wiped her face and hands. But there was no response, not a groan, not a whimper. "Esther, Esther, please wake up," Adam said, worry in his voice. But she didn't. Henry's boots scampered up the stairs and into the room. When he saw his mother lying in bed as if she was dead, he stopped, stared, and started to cry. Eve came to him, put an arm around him, and with her voice breaking said, "Henry, it's okay. Mama's going to be just fine." There was a pause. She looked at Papa. "Right, Papa? I better go get the doctor. If she wakes, stay with her. You and Henry will be all right, won't you?" Eve didn't answer at first. Then she just nodded. There were tears in her eyes, like Henry's. Adam thought, she doesn't believe what she just told Henry. Mama might not be all right. Adam realized Esther's breathing was quick and shallow. How could he leave Esther for even a minute? It would be a good hour before he could come back with Doc Evans, provided the good man was even around and not off on another call. "Eve, Henry, I'm going to get Doc Evans. I'll be gone at least an hour. Do not worry, I'm going to go saddle up." "Papa, can I come with you?" asked Henry. Thinking about it for a moment, Adam crouched down and met his son's eyes. "Not this time, son. I'm going to ride hard and fast." "I can ride with you, not on the pony." "I'll be afraid you've fallen off, son." "No, you stay here." "Please?" Eve spoke up. "Henry, I need you to help me do something very important while Papa is getting the doctor, okay?" Adam looked at her, not understanding. Henry didn't understand either. "What's that, weed the garden?" he asked sarcastically, misreading her intent and trying at all costs to avoid work. "No, silly." She looked at Papa for permission, but she didn't ask. "We're going to pray," she said. Adam gazed at her a moment. He felt like rebuking her, but decided it was better just to nod, as if to say, "Yes, please pray." A moment later, Adam was down the stairs, out of the house, and running toward the corral.